Welcome to another of our new features here on the baseball tutorials on stlsportspage.com. Today we're going to talk to you about a couple of important numbers within baseball. And baseball obviously is very much a game of numbers. It's been that way for the 100 plus, 200 plus years that baseball's been being played. And one of the numbers that everybody always starts out with is batting average. And I know it's kind of gotten downplayed a little bit by some of the modern analytics and people who studied all the numbers in the game. But to me, it is still an important number because it's one way that you can compare players from the past to the current players. And it's also a way to measure a player's success, because how many times have you heard he's batting 300? And that's a really good sign of a really good player. And even more instances, if a player can bat 400, that's an even better, rare, much more rare situation. You saw Tony Gwynn try to do that a few times. You saw George Brett come close years ago on trying to hit 400, but it's Ted Williams, of course, is known for hitting 400. So it's a very rare achievement, and we're going to try to make sure you understand exactly how rare that is. So to get batting average, it's a very actually simple math equation. You would take the number of hits a player has, divide that by the number of at-bats. So say a player, how many times have you heard somebody say he's a 300 hitter? Well, that basically means he's getting 3 hits every 10 at-bats, which also means if you do the rest of the math, he's making 7 outs. So that just goes to out of every 10 at-bats. That just goes to show you how really hard it is to hit 300, and how the best players in the game are still guys that could make out 7 out of 10 times. So hope that it's a very simple mathematical equation. That's all you do to do that. We did make a little short video which maybe will help explain it. The other number that we're going to talk about today is a little more complicated. It takes a little more math, but it's also become more popular in terms of analytics and how people analyze, and maybe gives you a little more of a complete picture of how good a hitter a player is, and that's OPS, which stands for on base plus slugging percentage. So there's a couple ways things you have to do to compute that number. You have to do a couple of different numbers first and then add them together, basically. So what you do first is you figure out a player's on-base percentage. And I'm just going to make sure that we get this right. I'm going to make sure review my notes here. But how you would compile an on-base percentage is basically just reflecting exactly what that means. How many times does a player get on base? So you get on base by a hit, you can get on base by a walk, or you can get on base by a hit by a pitch. So what you would just do is add all 3 of those numbers together, and then you would divide that kind of the same way you go about the batting average. But you'd add up, before you do the division, you add the at-bats, walks, hit by pitch, and sacrifices and sacrifice flies. And that then gets you the total number for a player's on-base percentage. In our case, for example, we're going to say his on-base percentage is 350, which is pretty good. 400 is better, just like batting average. And then to come up with the second part of it, you have to figure out a player's slugging percentage. And you do that by basically simple math is, say a body gets a single, that's 1 base. Player gets a double, that's 2 bases. Gets a triple, that's 3 bases. Gets a home run, that's 4 bases. So you add up those numbers together, that gives you a player's total bases that he has achieved by getting his hits. And then you divide that by the number of at-bats. And then, so let's say round numbers that his slugging percentage is 500. So then to get the OPS, you just add those 2 numbers together. The 350 for the on-base percentage, the 500 for the slugging percentage, that gives you an OPS of 850. You're trying to get your really good offensive players will get somewhere around 900 or to 1,000, even maybe 1,000 is a really, really good number for an OPS number. So hopefully if you understand how to do that, you can, and at least even if you don't have to compile it by yourself, well, if you hear those expressions maybe now on a broadcast or read them in a story about baseball, you'll have a little bit of better understanding of what those 2 numbers mean. Reporting for STLSportsPage.com, this is Rob Rains.